Welcome, dear listener. Find yourself a comfortable position. Let your body sink into whatever surface is holding you right now, and allow your breathing to slow just a little. You are about to spend some time in the gentle, misty bamboo forests of China, learning everything there is to know about one of the most beloved and peaceful animals on the planet, the giant panda. There is nothing you need to do right now, nothing to worry about, nothing to plan, nowhere to be. Just breathe and listen, and let the world of pandas wash over you like a soft, cool breeze drifting through tall green bamboo. The giant panda, known scientifically as Ailuropoda melanoleuca, is one of the most recognizable animals on Earth. That name, Ailuropoda melanoleuca, comes from Greek and Latin roots meaning roughly black and white cat foot. The name captures something essential about this animal, that distinctive coloring. Those bold patches of black against a field of creamy white, the round face with its dramatic dark eye patches, the chunky black legs and black ears. There is something almost dreamlike about the way a panda looks, as if an artist designed an animal specifically to be comforting and beautiful to human eyes. And perhaps, in some way, that beauty is part of why pandas have become such powerful symbols of conservation and hope around the world. Pandas live primarily in the mountainous regions of central China, in provinces such as Sichuan, Shanxi, and Gansu. The forests where they make their home are cool and misty, draped in green, often shrouded in clouds that drift slowly between the tall peaks. Bamboo grows thick and tall in these forests, and the sound of wind through bamboo is one of the most soothing sounds in nature, a soft, rustling whisper that fills the air from morning to night. Imagine yourself there now, standing at the edge of a bamboo grove, the air cool and fresh against your skin, the light filtering down in soft, golden shafts through the canopy above. This is where pandas have lived for millions of years. The fossil record shows that panda ancestors existed as far back as 8 million years ago. These ancient relatives of the modern giant panda were smaller and lived across a much wider range, spanning much of Asia. Over the long sweep of geological time, as climates shifted and landscapes changed, the panda's range contracted, becoming more and more specialized. Until today's giant panda occupies its relatively small mountain habitat in central China. This long history speaks to the panda's resilience. This is an animal that has survived through ice ages, through the rise and fall of countless other species, through millions of years of change. There is something deeply reassuring about that kind of persistence. A giant panda is a large animal, though its round, fluffy appearance can make it look almost toy-like. Adult males typically weigh between 190 and 275 pounds, though some can be heavier. Adult females are generally smaller, usually weighing between 155 and 220 pounds. They stand about 2 to 3 feet tall at the shoulder when on all fours, and can measure 5 to 6 feet from nose to tail. Despite their size, pandas move with a certain gentle, rolling grace. When they walk, they tend to amble slowly, their wide, padded paws making almost no sound on the forest floor. There is a quality of deliberate unhurriedness about the way a panda moves, as if it knows that there is no particular place it needs to be in any hurry. That remarkable black and white coloring has been the subject of considerable scientific study. For a long time, researchers were unsure exactly why pandas had evolved such a striking two-toned pattern, since most animals that need camouflage tend toward more subtle coloring. A study published in 2017 offered some answers. The research, conducted by scientists from the University of California, Davis and California State University, Long Beach, suggested that the different parts of the panda's coat serve different purposes. The white portions of the body, the face, belly, and back, may help the panda blend into snowy environments during winter. The black areas, particularly the arms and legs, may help the panda hide in shade. As for those distinctive dark eye patches, they may play a role in communication, helping pandas recognize one another or conveying information about mood and identity. So that beautiful, iconic pattern is not simply decorative. It is a functional adaptation that has served the panda well across the ages. The giant panda's eyes are quite different from those of most other bears. Instead of the round pupils that bears typically have, pandas have vertical slit pupils, similar to those of cats. This is one of the reasons pandas were once classified separately from other bears. Scientists debated for many years whether pandas were truly bears, whether they were more closely related to raccoons, or whether they occupied their own unique branch of the evolutionary tree. Modern genetic analysis has settled this question. Pandas are indeed bears, members of the family Ursidae, most closely related to spectacled bears of South America. But those cat-like pupils remain a distinctive and somewhat mysterious feature. Speaking of what makes pandas unique among bears, the panda's diet is perhaps the most extraordinary thing about them. Unlike all other bears, which are omnivores eating a wide variety of foods including meat, fish, berries, and roots, giant pandas subsist almost entirely on bamboo. Bamboo makes up about 99% of a wild panda's diet. They will occasionally eat other plants, and very rarely might eat a small animal such as a bird or a rodent. But for all practical purposes, a panda is a bamboo-eating specialist. This is remarkable because bamboo is actually a very poor food source for a large mammal. It is low in nutrition, particularly low in protein, and difficult to digest. The panda's digestive system, inherited from carnivorous ancestors, is not well designed for breaking down plant matter. Pandas lack the multi-chambered stomachs of ruminants like cows, which are specifically adapted for extracting nutrition from tough plant material. So how does a panda survive on such poor food? The answer involves a fascinating combination of strategies. First, pandas simply eat a lot. A giant panda typically spends between 10 and 16 hours every single day eating bamboo. They consume between 20 and 40 pounds of bamboo each day, and sometimes significantly more. When you picture a panda, perhaps the most iconic image is of one sitting calmly, a stalk of bamboo between its paws, methodically chewing. This is, in fact, what pandas do most of the time. Eating is their primary occupation, their great daily work, and they go about it with a kind of peaceful concentration that is deeply calming to watch. Second, pandas have slowed their metabolism considerably. Research using measurements of daily energy expenditure has shown that giant pandas have metabolic rates comparable to some reptiles, far lower than you would expect for a mammal of their size. A 2015 study found that pandas burn energy at a rate only about 38% of what would be predicted for a mammal of similar size. This metabolic slowdown extends to the panda's activity levels, its organ sizes, and even its thyroid hormone levels, which regulate metabolism. Pandas essentially operate at a much slower burn than other mammals, conserving energy wherever possible to compensate for their low-calorie diet. Third, pandas move slowly and deliberately, avoiding unnecessary exertion. Unlike bears that might range over vast territories, pandas have relatively small home ranges and do not undertake the long migrations or intense periods of activity that characterize many other large mammals. They rest frequently, often spending as much time resting as they do eating. When a panda settles down for a rest, it typically finds a comfortable spot, leaning against a tree, stretched out on a cool rock, or simply sitting in a patch of bamboo, and rests with an expression of complete contentment that is one of nature's most endearing sights. The panda's relationship with bamboo has required some remarkable physical adaptations. The most famous of these is the panda's pseudo-thumb, sometimes called the sixth finger. Technically, this structure is not a true thumb at all. It is an enlarged radial sesamoid bone, a wrist bone that has been modified over evolutionary time to function somewhat like a thumb, allowing pandas to grip bamboo stalks with remarkable dexterity. When a panda reaches out and grasps a bamboo stalk, it uses this pseudo-thumb in opposition to its actual 5 fingers, giving it a grip that is surprisingly precise for such a large animal. This adaptation is a beautiful example of convergent evolution. The panda independently evolved a thumb-like structure for grasping, just as primates independently evolved true opposable thumbs. Pandas also have particularly strong jaw muscles and broad, flat molars that are adapted for crushing tough bamboo stalks. Their skulls are unusually large and rounded compared to other bears, largely because the massive temporalis muscles that power the jaw attach to the skull and require extra bone for support. These adaptations allow pandas to eat not just the tender leaves and shoots of bamboo, which are the most nutritious parts, but also the tough stems, which are harder to process but available in greater quantity. A panda's teeth are impressive, large and strong, capable of crushing bamboo canes that might be an inch or more in diameter. And yet these same teeth, these powerful grinding molars, are used with extraordinary gentleness when pandas interact with their cubs. Bamboo itself is a fascinating plant that is inextricably linked to the panda's fate. Bamboo is actually a grass, the largest grass in the world, and it grows in dense stands called groves. There are hundreds of species of bamboo, and pandas in different regions tend to favor particular species. In the Kinling Mountains, pandas often eat arrow bamboo. In the Minchin Range, they tend to favor different species depending on the season, moving between lower elevations in winter and higher elevations in summer to follow the growth of their preferred bamboo species. Pandas have an intimate knowledge of the seasonal rhythms of bamboo in their territories, knowing when and where the most tender shoots will emerge in spring, which slopes will have the freshest growth after summer rains. One of the most dramatic aspects of bamboo's life cycle is its mass flowering and die-off. Bamboo is a monocarpic plant, meaning that individual bamboo plants flower only once and then die. Different species do this on different cycles. Some flower every few decades, some every century or more. When a bamboo species flowers, the die-off can be widespread and devastating, eliminating vast areas of panda habitat almost overnight. Historical records describe events when large portions of panda habitat lost their bamboo to mass flowering, and pandas were found wandering out of the mountains into villages, starving and desperate. This is one reason why pandas need large, connected habitats with multiple bamboo species, so that if one species flowers and dies, the pandas can move to areas where other species still thrive. Habitat fragmentation, which prevents pandas from moving freely between bamboo groves, is one of the most serious threats they face. Let us slow down a little now. Let your breathing deepen. Imagine the sound of a gentle rain beginning to fall on a bamboo forest, the drops pattering softly on thousands of wide green leaves, the air filling with the clean, green smell of rain on vegetation. A panda is sitting nearby, entirely unbothered by the rain, a stalk of bamboo in its paws, chewing slowly and contentedly. The rain falls, the bamboo sways, the panda chews. Nothing is wrong in this world. Giant pandas are generally solitary animals, except during the brief mating season and when mothers are raising their cubs. Each adult panda maintains a home range that it knows intimately, and these home ranges may overlap somewhat with those of neighboring pandas. Pandas communicate with each other through scent marking. They have scent glands beneath their tails and will rub these glands against trees, rocks, and other surfaces to leave information for other pandas who may pass by. A scent mark can communicate identity, sex, reproductive status, and perhaps other information we have not yet fully decoded. Pandas may also communicate through vocalizations. They can produce a range of sounds including bleats, honks, barks, and a chirping sound sometimes called a bleat that is used during social interactions. Mother pandas communicate with their tiny cubs through a range of gentle sounds that seem almost inconceivably tender coming from such large animals. The mating season for giant pandas occurs once a year, typically between March and May. Female pandas are fertile for only a very brief window each year, as few as 1 to 3 days, sometimes up to 5 days at the peak of their estrus cycle. This extremely narrow window of fertility makes panda reproduction naturally challenging, even in the wild. When a female panda is ready to mate, she will leave scent marks throughout her territory and will call frequently, vocalizations that can carry through the forest and alert males to her condition. Males may travel significant distances and compete with one another for the opportunity to mate with a receptive female. After mating, pandas experience a phenomenon called delayed implantation. The fertilized egg does not immediately implant in the uterus. Instead, it floats freely for weeks or even months before finally implanting. This means that the actual gestation period, the time from implantation to birth, is quite short, between 1 and 2 months. But the total time from mating to birth can range from 97 to 163 days because of this variable delay. This is a common reproductive strategy among bears, thought to allow females to time birth so that cubs are born when conditions are most favorable. A panda cub at birth is one of the most startling things in the animal kingdom. The mother, who may weigh 200 pounds or more, gives birth to a cub that weighs only 3 to 5 ounces, about the size of a stick of butter. The newborn cub is pink, hairless, and essentially helpless. Its eyes are closed, its limbs are barely functional, it cannot regulate its own body temperature. In fact, a giant panda cub at birth is one of the smallest newborns relative to maternal body size of any placental mammal. This tiny, pink, squirming creature will grow into an animal that might weigh over 200 pounds, a ratio of newborn to adult size that is extraordinary. The mother panda cradles her tiny cub with extraordinary care and gentleness. Despite her size and the seemingly impractical proportions involved, a panda mother is one of nature's most devoted parents. She holds the cub close to her body for warmth, cradling it gently in her massive paws, and she will barely leave her den for weeks after birth. She stops eating during the first days and sometimes weeks, devoting herself entirely to keeping the cub warm and nursing it. Panda milk is rich and nourishing, and the cub grows quickly. By the time the cub is a month old, its distinctive black and white markings have begun to appear. By 6 to 8 weeks, the cub opens its eyes for the first time, blinking slowly into a world of soft green light and the warm smell of its mother. By 3 to 4 months, the cub begins to crawl. By 6 months, it takes its first wobbly steps. By the time it is a year old, it is a recognizable little panda, still small and playful, learning the world from its mother's side. Cubs typically stay with their mothers for 1.5 to 3 years, learning everything they need to know: which bamboo to eat, where to find water, how to navigate their territory, how to climb trees. Tree climbing is a skill that young pandas take to with enthusiasm. Cubs will scramble up trees to escape threats, to rest, to play, and seemingly just for the pleasure of it. An older cub will clamber up a tree with cheerful determination, sometimes reaching considerable heights, and then survey the world from its perch with an expression of calm satisfaction. The ability to climb trees is an important survival skill for pandas, allowing them to escape predators like leopards and wild dogs. After the learning period ends and the cub becomes independent, the mother's reproductive cycle resumes, and she may mate again the following spring. Giant pandas in the wild typically reproduce every 2 to 3 years. Over a female's reproductive lifetime, she might produce 5 to 8 cubs. Not all of these will survive. Raising a cub successfully in the wild is challenging, and infant mortality, while not precisely documented, is thought to be relatively high. In the wild, pandas occasionally give birth to twins, but typically only one cub survives, as the mother cannot successfully raise two at once and will instinctively focus on the stronger of the two. In captivity, zookeepers have found ways to raise both twins by alternating which cub the mother holds, allowing both to receive maternal care. The conservation story of the giant panda is one of the most important and inspiring in the history of wildlife protection. By the 1970s and 1980s, giant panda populations had declined dramatically due to habitat loss, hunting, and the fragmentation of their mountain forests. Estimates of the wild panda population reached as low as around 1,000 individuals, and the species was considered highly endangered. The panda became the symbol of the World Wildlife Fund, founded in 1961, and its distinctive silhouette became perhaps the most recognizable conservation emblem in the world. China responded to the panda's plight with significant conservation efforts. Panda reserves were established across the species' remaining range. Hunting pandas, which had once been legal and was even encouraged at certain periods in history to supply zoos around the world, was made illegal and punishable by severe penalties. Captive breeding programs were developed to try to increase panda numbers and eventually return captive-bred animals to the wild. International cooperation brought expertise and resources from zoos and conservation organizations worldwide. The results of these efforts have been genuinely encouraging. A survey completed in 2014 found approximately 1,864 giant pandas living in the wild, a significant increase from earlier estimates, though the methodology of the surveys also improved over time, making direct comparison difficult. In 2016, the International Union for Conservation of Nature changed the panda's status from endangered to vulnerable, reflecting the progress that had been made. This was a moment of genuine hope and celebration in the conservation world. China has continued to expand its panda reserve system, and as of recent years, the country has announced plans for a massive giant panda national park that would consolidate and expand existing reserves into a connected system covering over 10,000 square miles, an area larger than some countries. Captive breeding of giant pandas has been a complex and sometimes frustrating endeavor. Pandas in captivity often showed little interest in reproduction, and early captive breeding programs had very limited success. Scientists working with captive pandas have had to become extremely creative, using techniques including artificial insemination, careful hormone monitoring, behavioral training to encourage natural mating behavior, and intensive observation of breeding pairs. The twin raising technique mentioned earlier, where keepers alternate which cub the mother holds so that both can survive, has become a standard practice in panda breeding centers. The Chengdu research base of giant panda breeding in Sichuan province has become one of the world's most successful panda breeding facilities. And visiting it to see the cubs in their outdoor enclosures has become one of the most popular wildlife tourism experiences in China. Panda diplomacy, the practice of China gifting or loaning giant pandas to other countries as gestures of goodwill, has a long history. The practice dates back to the Tang dynasty, over 1,000 years ago, when Empress Wu Zetian is said to have sent a pair of pandas to the Japanese emperor. In the modern era, China began loaning pandas to countries around the world in the 1950s, and this practice, known as panda diplomacy, became a significant element of China's foreign relations during the latter half of the 20th century. The arrival of pandas at a zoo is invariably a major public event, drawing enormous crowds and generating enormous goodwill. Today, pandas are present in zoos in countries including the United States, Japan, South Korea, Australia, France, Germany, Spain, the United Kingdom, Belgium, the Netherlands, Finland, Denmark, Austria, and others, all on loan from China under agreements that include significant conservation funding. Every panda born outside China technically belongs to China and may eventually be returned. The pandas housed in zoos around the world serve important roles beyond their value as diplomatic symbols. They contribute to genetic diversity in the captive panda population. They generate enormous public interest and funding for conservation, and they serve as ambassadors for their species, helping millions of people feel a personal connection to the plight of wild pandas. Research conducted with captive pandas has also yielded valuable insights into panda biology, reproductive physiology, nutrition, and behavior that has informed conservation efforts in the wild. Let yourself relax a little more deeply now. The night is quiet. The bamboo forest is still. A light mist drifts between the trees, softening the edges of everything. Somewhere in the darkness, a panda is resting, its round body curled comfortably, its breathing slow and even. The forest breathes around it, and the world is peaceful. Let your own body follow that rhythm, slow, easy, peaceful. The science of panda genetics has advanced tremendously in recent decades. The giant panda genome was sequenced in 2009, making it one of the first wild animal genomes to be fully mapped. This achievement has allowed researchers to study the panda's evolutionary history, its relationship to other bears, the genetics of its bamboo adaptation, and the genetic diversity, or lack thereof, within the wild panda population. One important finding from genetic studies is that wild pandas, despite their reduced numbers, retain more genetic diversity than was previously feared, which is a positive sign for the long-term health and adaptability of the species. The genetic studies have also helped clarify the panda's evolutionary history. Giant pandas diverged from other bears relatively recently in evolutionary terms, approximately 19 million years ago, according to some estimates, though the exact timing remains a subject of ongoing research. During this time, the lineage that would become modern pandas gradually specialized toward a bamboo-based diet, developing the distinctive physical adaptations we have already described. The red panda, a small, fox-like animal also associated with bamboo forests in Asia, is not actually closely related to the giant panda. It belongs to its own separate family, Ailuridae. The similarity in their common names and some aspects of their ecology reflects convergent evolution and geographic overlap rather than close kinship. Scientists have also studied the microbiome of giant pandas, the community of bacteria and other microorganisms living in their digestive tracts. Unlike herbivores such as cows, whose guts are filled with microorganisms specifically adapted to break down plant cellulose, the panda's gut microbiome more closely resembles that of carnivorous bears. This means that pandas are essentially digesting bamboo with a carnivore's gut, which explains why they need to eat such large quantities to extract enough nutrition. The microbiome studies have also revealed seasonal variations in the panda's gut bacteria, which shift with the panda's diet as it moves from eating bamboo leaves in some seasons to eating bamboo stems or shoots in others. Bamboo shoots, which emerge in spring, are a particular delicacy for pandas. The shoots are tender, relatively easy to eat, and nutritionally superior to the tough woody stems that make up the bulk of the panda's diet during other seasons. When bamboo shoots are available, pandas will travel to find them and will eat them voraciously, consuming quantities that seem disproportionate even by panda standards. There is something almost festive about watching a panda in a bamboo shoot patch. The usual leisurely pace of eating seems to accelerate slightly. The panda's movements become more purposeful, and the expression of contentment on its round face seems even more pronounced than usual. Water is an important part of the panda's life, and pandas typically make their home ranges in areas with reliable water sources. They drink frequently, often scooping water with their paws or simply lowering their large heads to drink directly. Pandas tend to drink from streams and rivers rather than standing water when possible, seeking the freshest sources. In the heat of summer, pandas may spend time near water sources, where the air is coolest and the bamboo tends to grow most lushly. The combination of cool water, dense bamboo, and dappled forest shade seems to represent, for a panda, something like paradise. The giant panda's sense of smell is highly developed and is its primary means of gathering information about its world. Those broad, rounded nostrils can detect the scent marks left by other pandas, the presence of predators or humans, the freshest and most nutritious bamboo, and presumably a wide range of other environmental information that we can only partially understand from our human perspective. A panda walking through a forest is constantly processing olfactory information, pausing to sniff at a scent mark on a tree, turning its broad head to catch a scent drifting on the breeze, pressing its nose close to a bamboo stalk before beginning to eat. The world as experienced by a panda is, in large part, a world of scent, rich, layered, and constantly informative. Vision, by contrast, seems less important to pandas. Their eyes are relatively small for their large heads, and while their color vision is adequate, it is not as sophisticated as that of primates. They see well enough to navigate their forest environment, find bamboo, recognize other pandas, and detect movement. But they do not rely on vision as their primary sense in the way that humans or birds do. Hearing falls somewhere in between. Pandas have good hearing and use their mobile, expressive ears to orient toward sounds and pick up the calls of other pandas or signs of potential danger. Those ears, incidentally, are among the most endearing features of the giant panda. The small, rounded black ears sit atop the large white head, and pandas can swivel them independently with considerable expressiveness. When a panda is relaxed and eating, the ears are typically in a neutral, slightly sideways position. When something catches a panda's attention, a sound in the forest, the approach of another panda, the ears swivel forward, alert and focused. When a panda is nervous or threatened, the ears may flatten slightly. Reading a panda's ear position is one of the ways that researchers and experienced panda keepers can gauge an individual animal's mood and stress level. The relationship between giant pandas and the people of China has been long and complex. Archaeological evidence shows that pandas were once distributed much more widely across eastern and southern China, and they appear in Chinese art and literature dating back thousands of years. In ancient China, pandas were sometimes called tapirs or mo, and were described in texts as powerful animals capable of biting through iron. Pandas were occasionally presented as tribute to Chinese emperors and were considered rare and prestigious animals. During the Han Dynasty, which lasted from around 200 BCE to 220 CE, there is a historical account of pandas being kept in the imperial gardens in Shanxi province. In more recent history, the first Western scientists to document the giant panda were a French missionary and naturalist named Pierre Armand David, who encountered the species in 1869 and described it for science. His account caused considerable excitement in the scientific community of the time, as the animal was entirely unlike anything previously known to Western science. Over the following decades, Western hunters and collectors sought panda specimens, and several live pandas were captured and brought to zoos in the West, beginning in 1936 when Ruth Harkness, an American socialite, brought a panda cub named Su Lin to the United States. Su Lin caused a sensation and was exhibited at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, drawing enormous crowds and essentially creating the modern phenomenon of pandamania. The decades of the mid-20th century saw considerable controversy over the capture and export of wild pandas, as well as the beginning of serious scientific study of panda biology and behavior. George Schaller, the distinguished wildlife biologist, conducted some of the first systematic scientific studies of wild pandas in the 1980s. Living in the Walong Nature Reserve and documenting panda behavior, habitat use, diet, and social organization in ways that had never been done before. His work and that of his Chinese colleagues laid the foundation for modern panda conservation science. Today, the scientific study of giant pandas is remarkably sophisticated. Researchers use GPS tracking collars to follow individual pandas through their mountain territories, building detailed maps of their movements and habitat use. Camera traps, motion-activated cameras installed throughout panda habitat, capture images of pandas going about their daily lives, allowing researchers to identify individuals and monitor population trends without disturbing the animals. Genetic sampling from hair, feces, and other materials left behind by pandas allows researchers to assess individual identity, family relationships, and population genetics across the species range. The combination of these and other techniques gives scientists an increasingly detailed picture of how wild pandas live, what they need, and how their populations are faring. One of the more surprising recent discoveries about giant pandas relates to their sleep. Pandas do not hibernate, unlike most other bear species. Because they cannot store enough fat on their low-calorie bamboo diet to sustain themselves through a winter of dormancy, pandas remain active year-round. In winter, they move to lower elevations where the temperature is less severe and bamboo remains accessible. They continue eating through the coldest months, relying on their thick fur and that slow metabolism to keep them comfortable. The fur of a giant panda is dense and somewhat oily, providing good insulation against cold and some protection against moisture. In a snowfall, a panda moving through the forest becomes an almost magical sight, that black and white figure moving calmly through the white landscape, leaving large, rounded footprints in the snow. Pandas in captivity have been carefully studied to understand their sleep patterns and daily rhythms. They tend to alternate between periods of eating and resting throughout the day and night, without a strong preference for being active at any particular time. They may eat for a few hours, then rest for a few hours, then eat again, in a cycle that continues around the clock. This polyphasic sleep pattern, multiple short sleep periods distributed throughout the day, is different from the monophasic sleep pattern of humans, who typically sleep in one long block. A panda's life, in some ways, resembles an extended meditation on eating and resting, with little else to disturb its peaceful routine. Pandas in good health are generally quiet animals. They do not roar like lions or wolves, do not make the loud, dramatic vocalizations of elephants or primates. Their voices are softer, more varied, and in some ways more intimate. Researchers have documented at least 11 distinct vocalizations in giant pandas, including bleats, squawks, barks, huffs, chirps, and a low, moaning sound that has been described as mooing, Cubs produce a particularly high-pitched, insistent bleating sound when they need attention from their mothers, a sound that has been described as somewhere between a lamb's bleat and a human infant's cry, and that triggers an immediate, powerful caregiving response in panda mothers. As cubs grow older, their vocal repertoire expands, and they begin to produce the more adult sounds, the chirps and bleats used in social encounters, the barks that signal alarm or annoyance, the quiet huffs of contentment. As we move deeper into the night, let yourself become even more relaxed. There is a panda somewhere out there in the misty mountains, sitting in the darkness with bamboo in its paws, chewing quietly, completely at peace with the world. It does not worry about tomorrow or regret yesterday. It is simply present in this moment, in this forest, eating this bamboo, breathing this cool mountain air. We can take a lesson from the panda's profound capacity for being exactly where it is, doing exactly what it needs to do, without any of the anxious mental commentary that so often accompanies human existence. The bamboo forests where pandas live are rich ecosystems supporting many other species. The temperate broadleaf forests of the Kinling and Minchin Mountains are home to golden snub-nosed monkeys with their extraordinary blue faces and long golden fur, to toucans, large, strange-looking bovids that look almost like a hybrid of several different animals, to the rare and beautiful snow leopard in the higher elevations, to golden pheasants with their stunning plumage, to numerous species of small mammals including flying squirrels and various rodents, to hundreds of species of birds, and to a rich community of insects, reptiles, and amphibians. The panda, as a large mammal with specific habitat requirements, serves as what conservationists call an umbrella species. Protecting panda habitat also protects the entire community of species that shares that habitat. When we save the panda's forest, we save an entire world. The relationship between pandas and bamboo is so intimate that it extends beyond simple feeding. Pandas shape their bamboo forests through their foraging, breaking stems, moving between groves, and leaving behind their large, nutrient-rich droppings that may help distribute nutrients, and even bamboo seeds through the forest. The forest shapes the pandas in return, its structure determining where they can find food, where they can rest safely, where they can raise their cubs. Over millions of years, panda and bamboo forest have evolved together, each influencing the other in ways both obvious and subtle. The panda is not merely an inhabitant of this forest. It is a part of this forest, woven into its ecology as surely as the bamboo itself. Some researchers have studied how pandas select their bamboo. Given that they eat so much of it, any preference for particular species, particular parts of the plant, or particular conditions of growth would have significant implications for understanding panda nutrition and habitat use. Studies have found that pandas are indeed selective, preferring young, tender growth over older, tougher material when both are available, choosing species and plant parts that are higher in protein and lower in fiber, and adjusting their selectivity based on the season and the relative availability of different food options. In spring, when bamboo shoots are available, pandas may focus intensively on shoots, eating relatively little else. In summer and autumn, when leaf growth is maximal, leaves may make up a larger proportion of their diet. In winter, when both shoots and leaves are less available, pandas fall back on the tough woody stems, which require more chewing and yield less nutrition but are abundant and accessible. The panda's relationship with its environment is also shaped by its movement patterns. Radio tracking and GPS studies have revealed that individual pandas typically use home ranges of between 1.5 and 4 square miles, though males may use larger areas, particularly during the mating season, when they may travel more extensively in search of receptive females. Within their home ranges, Pandas show strong sight fidelity, returning to the same areas repeatedly over years and even decades. An individual panda may have favorite resting spots, preferred water sources, and well-worn travel routes through its territory that it uses consistently across seasons and years. This deep familiarity with a specific landscape gives the panda an intimate knowledge of its home that no outside observer can fully appreciate. As climate change continues to alter temperature and precipitation pattern across China's mountain ranges, scientists are increasingly concerned about its effects on panda habitat. Models suggest that rising temperatures will shift the distribution of bamboo species upward to higher elevations, potentially compressing the available habitat for pandas into smaller and higher areas. The mismatch between current panda populations and their future habitat could become a significant conservation challenge in coming decades. Researchers are already working to understand these potential shifts and to develop conservation strategies that can anticipate and adapt to changing conditions, including ensuring that panda reserves are large enough and connected enough to allow panda populations to shift with their habitat as climate patterns change. The role of the panda in Chinese culture and identity is profound and multifaceted. The panda appears on Chinese coins, on postage stamps, in advertising, in art, and in countless commercial contexts. The Chengdu research base of giant panda breeding, which we mentioned earlier, receives millions of visitors each year. Many of them Chinese tourists for whom seeing pandas is a deeply meaningful experience. The panda occupies a unique space in the Chinese national imagination. It is simultaneously an ancient symbol of the natural world, a source of immense national pride, a reminder of environmental fragility, and a globally recognized emblem of China's biodiversity. The Chinese government's commitment to panda conservation reflects not only the scientific and ecological importance of protecting the species, but also this deep cultural significance. International conservation partnerships centered on giant pandas have been remarkably productive. The Giant Panda Conservation Program, a collaboration between Chinese government agencies, international conservation organizations, and zoos around the world, has brought together expertise, funding, and goodwill in service of panda conservation in ways that have set a model for international wildlife conservation partnerships more broadly. The panda, perhaps because of its universal appeal and the straightforwardness of its conservation needs, essentially protect and connect its forest habitat, has proven to be a tractable conservation challenge in a world where many conservation problems seem intractable. The technology used in panda research and conservation has advanced remarkably in recent years. Satellite imagery is used to monitor changes in panda habitat from above, tracking the health of bamboo forests, detecting encroachments by human activities, and assessing the connectivity of panda populations across the landscape. Environmental DNA sampling, testing water and soil samples for traces of genetic material shed by pandas, allows researchers to detect the presence of pandas in areas without installing cameras or tracking individual animals. Artificial intelligence is being applied to analyze the vast quantities of camera trap images collected across panda reserves, automating the process of identifying individual pandas from their distinctive markings and building comprehensive population databases. These technologies are transforming our ability to monitor and protect pandas and their habitat. The economic dimensions of panda conservation are also significant. Ecotourism centered on giant pandas generates hundreds of millions of dollars annually for local economies in panda habitat regions. The loan fees paid by foreign zoos to China for panda pairs are substantial, typically around $1 million per year per panda, and these fees go directly to support panda conservation in China. The global fundraising inspired by pandas, channeled through conservation organizations, zoos, and various charitable initiatives, provides additional resources. In this sense, the panda's extraordinary appeal to humans around the world has been converted into real economic support for its conservation, demonstrating how the love people feel for a particular animal can be harnessed as a force for positive change. Panda cubs born in captivity, whether in China or at foreign zoos, are events of global significance. The birth of a panda cub is invariably major news, covered by media around the world. Cameras are set up in the cubs' enclosures so that people everywhere can watch them grow and develop in real time. Each cub is given a name, often chosen through public competitions, and develops a following of devoted fans who track its progress, celebrate its milestones, and feel a genuine emotional bond with an animal they may never see in person. This global community of panda enthusiasts is itself a kind of conservation asset, a vast network of people who care about pandas and are inclined to support their protection. The story of Bao Bao, born at the Smithsonian's National Zoo in Washington, D.C. in 2013, illustrates this phenomenon well. Bao Bao's birth was watched live online by millions of people around the world. As she grew from the tiny pink blob she was at birth into a roly-poly, playful cub, she accumulated an enormous following of fans who watched her videos, read updates about her development, and felt a personal connection to her life and progress. When Bao Bao was sent to China in 2017, in accordance with the terms of the Panda Loan Agreement, there was genuine sadness among her many fans, and her departure was covered as a significant news event. Her subsequent life in China, where she has produced cubs of her own, has continued to be followed by interested fans worldwide. The power of the panda's image to move people is something that scientists and conservation professionals have thought carefully about. Why do humans respond so strongly to pandas? Part of the answer lies in what ethologists call the baby schema, a set of physical features including large heads, large eyes, round faces, and soft features that trigger nurturing responses in human observers. Baby pandas, with their enormous heads, huge eyes, round cheeks, and clumsy, rolling movements, exhibit these features in an almost exaggerated form. Even adult pandas retain many of these characteristics, maintaining a somewhat cub-like appearance throughout their lives. This, combined with the panda's apparent lack of aggression toward humans, its slow and non-threatening movements, and its almost comic dedication to eating, creates a package of characteristics that humans find irresistibly appealing. But the panda's appeal goes beyond mere physical characteristics. There is something about the panda's way of being in the world that resonates deeply with people. The panda is content. It eats its bamboo, it rests. It moves through its forest with complete ease and self-possession. It does not seem to be striving for anything, does not seem tormented by unfulfilled ambitions or anxious about an uncertain future. It is simply, profoundly itself, a panda in a bamboo forest, doing what pandas do. In our complex, rushed, often anxious world, the panda's apparent equanimity strikes a deep chord. We recognize something we have lost, or perhaps something we have always wanted, in the panda's serene relationship with its existence. Let your breathing become even slower and more regular now. Imagine yourself lying on soft grass at the edge of a bamboo grove, the sky above deep and full of stars, the air warm with the faint smell of green leaves and cool earth. The bamboo makes its soft sound in a gentle breeze. Somewhere nearby, the rhythm of a panda's slow, contented chewing provides a backdrop to the silence, as regular and soothing as a heartbeat. The giant panda's lifespan, both in the wild and in captivity, is a topic of genuine scientific interest. In the wild, pandas typically live to be around 15 to 20 years old, though precise data on wild panda lifespans is difficult to gather given the challenges of long-term individual monitoring. In captivity, with access to veterinary care, controlled diet, and protection from predators and other hazards, pandas frequently live longer. The oldest known giant panda in captivity was Gia Gia, a female who lived at Ocean Park, Hong Kong, and passed away in 2016 at the age of 38, an extraordinary age for any bear, and a testament to the quality of care she received. Most captive pandas are considered elderly by around 25 or 30 years of age, showing signs of reduced mobility and other age-related changes familiar from other species. The healthcare of captive pandas has become a highly specialized veterinary field. Pandas are susceptible to a range of health problems, including reproductive challenges, respiratory infections, digestive issues related to their unusual diet, and the various problems associated with aging. Panda veterinarians must be deeply familiar with the species' unique physiology, that low metabolism, the unusual diet, the distinctive reproductive biology, to provide appropriate care. Routine health monitoring of captive pandas includes regular fecal analysis to assess diet and health, periodic physical examinations that often require brief sedation, blood sampling, and various imaging procedures. Developing appropriate anesthesia protocols for pandas was itself a significant scientific challenge, given the species' unique physiology. The pandas at the Chengdu Research Base and at other breeding centers in China live in carefully designed enclosures that attempt to provide an enriching environment while also facilitating breeding and research. Enclosures include climbing structures, water features, areas with natural bamboo, and spaces for the pandas to have privacy when they want it. Enrichment activities, providing pandas with novel foods, objects to investigate. Puzzles that require problem-solving to obtain food rewards are used to stimulate mental activity and prevent boredom. Research has shown that pandas in enriched environments tend to be more active, more socially engaged, and reproductively more successful than those in barren enclosures. The design of panda enclosures has improved dramatically over the decades as understanding of panda behavior and needs has deepened. One of the more charming aspects of captive panda management is the use of panda bears, that is, keepers and veterinary staff who work closely with pandas and develop individual relationships with the animals in their care. Pandas are intelligent enough to recognize individual humans and to develop preferences and habits in their interactions with familiar people. A panda may be more relaxed and cooperative with a keeper it knows well, accepting routine health checks with minimal stress, compared to the same procedures performed by a stranger. This relationship between panda and keeper is carefully cultivated, based on trust, consistency, and positive reinforcement through food rewards. The bamboo-laden hands of a beloved keeper can calm a nervous panda more effectively than almost any other intervention. The research conducted with captive pandas extends far beyond reproductive biology. Scientists have studied panda cognitive abilities, using puzzle boxes and problem-solving tasks to assess intelligence and flexibility. Pandas have shown themselves to be quite clever, capable of learning complex tasks, solving novel problems, and exhibiting a degree of spatial memory and planning that may surprise those who think of them primarily as gentle bamboo eaters. They can learn to respond to training cues for a range of behaviors, presenting a paw for blood sampling, moving into a specific part of their enclosure, tolerating the presence of veterinary equipment, all of which makes their care considerably easier and less stressful for both panda and keeper. Studies of wild panda behavior have also revealed aspects of panda's social life that were not apparent from early research. While pandas are often described as strictly solitary, the reality is more nuanced. The question of panda intelligence is one that has interested researchers for a long time. Pandas' brains are relatively large for their body size, and the cerebral cortex, the part of the brain associated with complex processing and problem-solving, is well developed. This is consistent with the observation that pandas are capable learners and can solve novel problems. At the same time, pandas do not exhibit the complex tool use, social learning, or innovative problem-solving that characterizes the most cognitively advanced mammals such as primates, cetaceans, and elephants. They seem to occupy a middle range of mammalian intelligence, capable and adaptable, but not at the extreme end of the cognitive spectrum. What they do possess in abundance is something that might be called perceptual acuity, a rich awareness of their immediate sensory environment, particularly through smell, that guides their moment-to-moment behavior with impressive precision. The panda's paws deserve a bit more attention than we have given them so far. Those large, rounded paws with their specialized pseudothumb are among the most distinctive and capable appendages in the animal kingdom. The forepaws in particular are remarkably dexterous. A panda can manipulate bamboo with something approaching the precision of fingers, using the pseudothumb and the flexible wrist joint to strip leaves from stems, bite off sections of cane at exactly the right angle, and move food from paw to mouth with smooth efficiency. The pads on the panda's paws are thick and cushioned, providing traction on varied terrain and protection from the rough surfaces of bamboo stems. Pandas are excellent climbers, and their paws grip tree bark with surprising security, allowing them to ascend trees that might seem challenging for such bulky animals. The scent glands on a panda's body are concentrated in the anogenital region, and a panda performing scent-marking behavior is a distinctive sight. The panda will back up against a tree or a rock, raise its tail, and press the gland against the surface, sometimes rubbing it up and down with focused attention. Or it may perform a more dramatic handstand scent mark, raising itself on its forepaws against a tree with its hind legs in the air, leaving scent marks as high on the tree as possible, a behavior thought to signal size and dominance, since a mark left higher on a tree is associated with a larger, potentially more dominant animal. A panda going through its scent-marking routine has an air of purposeful concentration, as if performing an important ritual that deserves full attention. Panda's relationship with water includes not just drinking but bathing and playing. Pandas in warm weather will sometimes wade into streams and pools, appearing to find the cool water pleasurable. They are capable swimmers, able to cross rivers and streams when necessary, though they generally prefer to keep their feet relatively dry when possible. Young pandas, in particular, may engage in water play with the same cheerful enthusiasm they bring to other forms of play, splashing, rolling, and generally exploring the possibilities of a new aquatic environment. This playfulness is one of the most endearing aspects of young pandas and is not entirely absent even in adults, who may occasionally exhibit what appears to be play behavior, rolling, somersaulting, or engaging in what looks like solitary play with objects they encounter in their environment. The future of the giant panda, while more hopeful than it seemed several decades ago, remains tied to complex environmental and political factors. The success of China's conservation efforts to date reflects a sustained commitment of resources and political will that must be maintained over the long term to be truly effective. As China's economy continues to grow and its human population places increasing demands on land and resources, Maintaining and expanding panda habitat will require ongoing vigilance and the navigation of sometimes competing interests. The proposed giant panda national park represents an ambitious vision for the long-term protection of panda habitat, but its success will depend on effective implementation, adequate funding, and the cooperation of local communities who live within and around the protected areas. Local communities play a crucial and often overlooked role in panda conservation. The people who live in and around panda reserves, farmers, herders, timber workers, and others, have complex relationships with the protected areas and with the pandas themselves. Historically, there have been conflicts between the interests of local communities and the demands of conservation, as restrictions on timber harvesting, agricultural expansion, and other activities have sometimes limited economic opportunities for people who were already living in poverty. Modern conservation approaches recognize that conservation can only succeed in the long term if it provides benefits to local communities as well as to wildlife. And significant efforts have been made to develop economic alternatives for communities living in panda habitat, including ecotourism, sustainable agriculture, and payments for ecosystem services. Interviews with local people in panda habitat regions have revealed a complex mixture of attitudes toward pandas, pride in their local natural heritage, resentment of restrictions on economic activities, pragmatic interest in tourism benefits, and genuine affection for the animals they sometimes glimpse in the forest or find evidence of in the mountains above their villages. Building and maintaining the support of these communities for conservation is as important as any scientific or technical achievement. And the long-term success of panda conservation will depend in significant measure on whether the people who share the panda's landscape feel that its protection is beneficial to them, as well as to the broader world. Climate change, as mentioned earlier, represents perhaps the most fundamental long-term threat to panda conservation. A study published in 2018 projected that if greenhouse gas emissions continue on their current trajectory, the impact on bamboo distribution in panda habitat could severely reduce the amount of suitable panda habitat by the end of the century. The study also found, however, that under scenarios in which emissions are significantly reduced, much of the panda's current habitat could be preserved. This finding places panda conservation within the broader context of global climate action, underlining the connection between the local work of protecting mountain forests in China and the global challenge of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. As you listen, let your thoughts slow and simplify. The world outside is quiet. Whatever concerns and complexities the day brought with it are far away now, resting somewhere outside the circle of warmth and quiet where you are. All that matters right now is this moment, and this gentle story of pandas and bamboo forests and mountain mist, and your own breathing, slow and easy, like a panda breathing in the cool mountain air. The history of panda research is filled with remarkable individuals whose dedication and ingenuity have transformed our understanding of this extraordinary species. Hu Jinchu, a Chinese wildlife biologist who began studying pandas in the 1970s, is often considered the father of giant panda field research in China. His long-term studies in the Hualong Nature Reserve established fundamental data on panda ecology, behavior, and population biology that remains foundational to the field. His collaboration with George Schaller in the 1980s, one of the great international scientific partnerships in conservation history, produced a landmark study whose conclusions continue to inform conservation planning decades later. Zhen Jiayin, another Chinese researcher, made significant contributions to our understanding of panda reproduction, developing techniques for monitoring reproductive hormones in captive pandas that dramatically improved the success of captive breeding. Devra Clayman at the Smithsonian National Zoo and her colleagues contributed important work on panda behavior and captive management. More recently, a new generation of Chinese scientists has brought advanced genetic, remote sensing, and computational tools to bear on panda conservation questions, continuing the scientific tradition of innovation and dedication that has characterized this field. The ethical questions surrounding panda conservation are not always simple. The captive breeding of pandas, the use of artificial insemination, the twin-swapping practices, the indefinite loan of pandas to foreign zoos, all of these involve interventions in animal lives that raise questions about welfare, autonomy, and the appropriate boundaries of human manipulation of other species for conservation purposes. These questions are taken seriously by the conservation community, and ongoing efforts are made to develop practices that achieve conservation goals while minimizing stress and discomfort for individual animals. The field of conservation welfare, which applies animal welfare science to conservation contexts, has provided useful frameworks for thinking about these trade-offs. The question of reintroduction, returning captive-bred pandas to the wild, is one that the Chinese conservation community has approached with considerable care and some notable setbacks. Early attempts at panda reintroduction were not fully successful, with some released animals failing to survive in the wild due to insufficient preparation for independent survival. More recently, China has developed more rigorous reintroduction protocols that involve extensive training of pandas in survival skills before release, careful selection of release sites with appropriate habitat and few existing wild pandas, and intensive post-release monitoring. Several pandas have now survived extended periods in the wild following reintroduction, offering cautious grounds for optimism that this approach can contribute meaningfully to wild panda population recovery. The genetics of reintroduction is carefully managed to maximize the genetic diversity of released animals and to ensure that reintroduced pandas can contribute positively to the genetic health of wild populations. Detailed genetic databases of all captive pandas are maintained, and breeding decisions are informed by genetic analysis to avoid inbreeding and maximize the representation of different genetic lineages. This careful management of the captive panda gene pool is an example of sophisticated population genetics applied to practical conservation, demonstrating the value of integrating advanced science with on-the-ground conservation practice. As we approach the end of our journey through the world of the giant panda, let us take a moment to appreciate the sheer wonder of this animal's existence. Here is a creature that has lived in bamboo forests for millions of years, that evolved an elaborate suite of physical and physiological adaptations to extract a living from one of the least nutritious foods available in its environment, that grows from a pink scrap of helpless life, weighing a few ounces into a massive, majestic animal of several hundred pounds, that wanders its mountain territory with calm authority and deep familiarity, that marks its presence in the forest through scent, communicates through vocalizations of surprising variety and subtlety, and raises its young with a tenderness and care that would be recognizable to any loving parent. This is an animal of remarkable depth and complexity, whose serene exterior conceals a rich inner life and a profound engagement with its world. The giant panda is not a relic of the past, barely surviving on the margins of a world that has moved on. It is an active, vital presence in its mountain forests, a keystone of its ecosystem, a repository of millions of years of evolutionary history, and a living symbol of what is possible when humans choose to act in defense of the natural world. Its story is still being written, and the chapters that remain to be added will depend in large part on choices that we make about land use, about climate, about the resources we commit to conservation, about the values we hold and pass on to the generations that follow us. May the pandas thrive in their misty mountains. May the bamboo grow thick and tall. May the cubs squeak and tumble and learn the ways of the forest from their patient mothers. May the old bears rest in their favorite spots, surrounded by the forest they know so deeply, chewing their bamboo with the unhurried contentment that is their birthright. May we be wise enough, and caring enough and persistent enough to ensure that this ancient, extraordinary life continues to unfold in the mountains of China for millions of years to come. And now, dear listener, let yourself drift. The bamboo forest is all around you, cool and green and full of quiet life. The mist is settling, the stars are coming out above the canopy, and somewhere nearby, a round, white and black shape is resting peacefully, its breathing slow and even, perfectly content in its moment, in its forest, in its life. Follow that breath, follow that peace. Let the forest hold you, let the night carry you. Let the gentle world of the panda be the last thing in your thoughts as you drift down into a deep, quiet, restful sleep. The bamboo sways. The mist drifts, the panda sleeps, and so do you. There is so much more to know about pandas, and the night is long and there is no rush. Let us continue wandering through the bamboo forest together, picking up threads of panda knowledge and following them as they wind through the trees. The taxonomy of the giant panda has been debated and refined many times over the 150 or so years since Western science first became aware of this species. When Pierre Armand David first described the animal in 1869, he placed it in the genus Ursus, the bear genus. A few years later, Alphonse Milne Edwards, examining the specimens David had collected, moved it to a new genus, Ailuropoda, which it retains today. The question of whether pandas were bears or something else entirely was not definitively settled until molecular genetic studies in the late 20th century conclusively established pandas as members of the bear family Ursidae, most closely related to spectacled bears of South America, a kinship that would have been difficult to guess from appearance alone, given how different a panda looks from a spectacled bear. The name panda itself has uncertain origins. The Nepali word ponya is sometimes cited as the source, referring to the bamboo-eating animal, and may have been applied first to the red panda before being extended to the giant panda. The red panda, which we have already briefly mentioned, was actually described by Western science before the giant panda, and so the simpler name panda was applied to the smaller animal first. When the giant panda was described, the adjective giant was added to distinguish it from its smaller, unrelated namesake. Today, when people say simply panda, they almost universally mean the giant panda, while the red panda must wear its qualifier at all times. The red panda deserves a brief digression, even in a story ostensibly about giant pandas, if only because its name has created so much confusion, and because it shares the bamboo forest ecosystem with its more famous non-relative. The red panda, Ailurus fulgens, is a small, fox-sized animal with a long, bushy, ringed tail, reddish-brown fur, a round face with white ears, and a generally irresistible appearance. It lives in temperate mountain forests from the eastern Himalayas to southwestern China, overlapping in range with the giant panda in some areas. Like the giant panda, it eats bamboo, though it supplements its diet more extensively with fruit, roots, and small animals. Like the giant panda, it has a modified wrist bone that functions somewhat like a thumb. A remarkable example of convergent evolution, two completely unrelated lineages independently developing the same solution to the same problem of grasping bamboo. The red panda is itself endangered, threatened by habitat loss and the pet trade, and deserves as much conservation attention as its giant namesake, though it receives considerably less. Among the many remarkable aspects of panda biology, the question of color perception is one that has received some scientific attention. Giant pandas have been shown in behavioral studies to have color vision, which might seem unnecessary for an animal whose diet consists primarily of green bamboo against a green forest background. One proposed explanation is that color vision may help pandas assess the quality and nutritional state of bamboo, distinguishing healthy green growth from yellowed or diseased plants. Another suggestion is that color vision may play a role in social signaling, helping pandas assess the condition of potential mates or rivals during the brief mating season. The truth is probably that pandas inherited color vision from their bear ancestors, who found it useful for a variety of tasks, and retain it because it provides some advantage. Even if that advantage is less obvious in the panda's specialized ecological niche than it might be for a more generalist bear species. The sense of hearing in pandas has been studied through both field observations and controlled experiments. Pandas show behavioral responses to a range of sounds, including the calls of other pandas, sounds made by potential predators, and human-generated sounds such as voices and machinery. They are capable of discriminating between the calls of individuals they know and those of strangers. And they appear to be sensitive to the emotional content of vocalizations, responding differently to distress calls than to contentment sounds. The range of frequencies they can hear extends into the ultrasonic range, allowing them to detect sounds that are inaudible to human ears. This may be particularly relevant for mothers communicating with very young cubs, whose vocalizations include high-frequency components that may help the mother locate them in the den. The panda's brain, while not as large relative to body size as those of the most cognitively advanced mammals, shows some interesting structural features. The olfactory bulbs, the brain regions devoted to processing smell, are proportionally large, consistent with the panda's heavy reliance on scent for communication and navigation. The cerebellum, which coordinates movement and motor learning, is well developed, reflecting the panda's need for precise motor control in manipulating bamboo. The prefrontal cortex, associated with planning, decision-making, and cognitive flexibility, is moderately well developed, consistent with the panda's demonstrated ability to solve novel problems and adapt to new situations, but not to the extraordinary degree seen in primates and cetaceans. Panda tracks in the snow or soft mud are distinctive and easily recognized once you know what to look for. The front feet leave prints that are large, roughly circular, with 5-toe impressions and the distinctive impression of the pseudothumb offset to the side. The hind feet are slightly smaller. The gait pattern of a walking panda shows the characteristic bear-like plantigrade stance, walking on the whole foot rather than on the toes, with the feet pointing slightly inward, giving panda tracks a somewhat pigeon-toed appearance. Researchers in panda habitat have become skilled at interpreting not just the tracks themselves, but the stories they tell, a trail of tracks that stops and then resumes in a different direction, or that leads to a particularly dense stand of bamboo, or that shows the overlapping prints of a mother followed closely by the smaller prints of a cub. The panda's behavior during the mating season, while brief and infrequent, is among the most intensively studied aspects of its biology. Male pandas during the mating season become more active and cover more ground than usual, following scent trails left by females in estrus. When a male finds a receptive female, the courtship process involves a series of vocalizations, approaches, retreats, and complex interactive behaviors that can last for hours or even days before mating actually occurs. Multiple males may compete for a single female, with larger, more dominant males typically prevailing in direct competition, while subordinate males may use alternative strategies, approaching at different times, waiting for the dominant male to be distracted. The female has her own significant role in the process, accepting or rejecting suitors and ultimately influencing which male successfully mates with her. The birth of a panda cub, even when not the first for an experienced mother, appears to trigger remarkable behavioral changes. A female who has been living largely independently, moving through her territory with calm self-sufficiency, transforms on giving birth into a fiercely protective, endlessly attentive mother. She will charge at perceived threats that she would normally avoid, approaching humans, other pandas, and any other animals that come near her den. This protective aggression, which may seem startling in an animal not generally known for aggression, reflects the extreme vulnerability of the tiny cub and the enormous investment the mother has made in it. The first weeks of a cub's life are the period of highest risk, and the mother's watchfulness during this time is essential to the cub's survival. As the cub grows and becomes more mobile, the mother's protective behavior adapts accordingly. She remains vigilant but begins allowing the cub more independence, following it as it begins to explore the world around the den site, gently redirecting it away from hazards, and intervening quickly if anything threatens. The cub's rapidly developing curiosity takes it in all directions, sniffing at every new thing, attempting to climb any vertical surface, and investigating other pandas, prey animals, and even humans with a fearless inquisitiveness that makes young pandas both endearing and occasionally challenging to manage in captive settings. Play behavior in panda cubs is extensive and serves the same developmental functions as play in other young mammals, building physical strength and coordination, developing social skills, and practicing behaviors that will be needed in adult life. Cubs play with objects, rolling bamboo stalks, leaves, and other items around their enclosures. They wrestle and tumble with each other in facilities that raise twins, developing the physical skills and social negotiation abilities needed for interactions with other pandas. They play with their mothers, who generally tolerate considerable rambunctiousness from their cubs, and they engage in solitary play, rolling, somersaulting, an apparent, self-directed exploration of their own physical capabilities. The play of panda cubs is one of the most joyful sights in nature, and the videos of cubs at breeding centers in China tumbling over each other in outdoor play areas have accumulated hundreds of millions of views online, spreading panda delight to every corner of the world. The process by which a panda cub learns to eat bamboo is gradual and carefully observed by researchers. Nursing continues for an extended period, gradually decreasing as the cub begins to experiment with solid food. Most cubs begin showing interest in bamboo between 6 and 9 months of age, initially just mouthing and chewing on stalks without extracting much nutrition, then gradually developing the technique and strength needed to eat bamboo effectively. By the time the cub is weaned, typically at around 18 months to 2 years of age, it is capable of sustaining itself on bamboo, though it continues to learn by observing its mother's foraging and food selection for as long as it remains with her. The long association between a mother panda and her cub appears to provide not only practical survival skills, but also a kind of emotional and psychological foundation. Cubs that have had a good relationship with an attentive, skilled mother tend to be more confident, more socially competent, and reproductively more successful as adults. This is not surprising from a developmental psychology perspective. Secure early attachments tend to produce more confident and capable adults across many species, including humans. The quality of maternal care is one of the most important factors determining a young panda's ultimate success in life. In captive settings, significant research has gone into understanding how best to manage the social environment for pandas at different life stages. While adults are generally kept separately except during the breeding season, and while mothers raise cubs, young pandas benefit from social contact with peers. Research has found that young pandas raised with access to other cubs of similar age develop better social skills and are more likely to reproduce successfully as adults than cubs raised in isolation. This has led to changes in management practices at panda breeding facilities, where efforts are now made to provide age-appropriate social contact for developing cubs. The veterinary challenges of caring for giant pandas in captivity are considerable and have driven significant advances in veterinary science. Developing appropriate anesthetic protocols for pandas required extensive research into the species, unique physiology and metabolism. Diagnostic imaging, X-rays, ultrasound, CT scanning, and MRI has been adapted and refined for use with pandas, allowing veterinarians to monitor the health of internal organs, detect diseases early, and guide medical interventions. Nutritional science has been applied intensively to understanding the panda's dietary requirements in captivity, leading to the development of specially formulated biscuits that supplement the bamboo diet and ensure adequate nutrition. The result of these and many other advances is that captive pandas today are generally healthier and live longer than those of even a few decades ago. Dental health is a particular concern for captive pandas, given the enormous wear placed on teeth by a lifetime of bamboo chewing. Dental disease, including fractured teeth and periodontal problems, is common in older captive pandas and can significantly affect their ability to eat and maintain body condition. Veterinarians caring for older pandas monitor dental health carefully and have developed techniques for performing dental procedures, cleaning, extractions, and even root canals under anesthesia. There is something almost touching about the image of a skilled veterinary dentist carefully tending to the teeth of an elderly panda, applying the full resources of modern medicine to the comfort of an animal whose ancestors chewed bamboo in mountain forests millions of years before any human existed. Research into panda genetics has had implications beyond the conservation of this single species. The techniques developed for genetic analysis of panda populations have been applied to conservation genetics more broadly, and the panda has served as a model system for developing and testing approaches to managing genetic diversity in small, endangered populations. The detailed genetic database of the captive panda population is one of the most comprehensive of its kind for any non-domestic animal, and the analytical methods developed to manage this database have influenced how conservation geneticists think about and manage genetic diversity in other species. The contribution of panda research to our understanding of bear biology more broadly has also been significant. Because pandas are bears, unusual bears to be sure, but bears nonetheless, discoveries about panda physiology, behavior, and genetics illuminate aspects of bear biology that would be difficult to study in other, less accessible species. The panda's extraordinary metabolic adaptations, for example, have provided insights into how metabolism can be modulated in mammals more generally, with potential implication for understanding metabolic diseases in humans. The relationship between pandas and the broader conservation movement is one of mutual benefit and occasional tension. Pandas have been extraordinarily effective at drawing attention and funding to conservation more broadly, and the resources generated by Panda Appeal have supported conservation projects around the world, not just in China. At the same time, some conservationists have argued that the enormous resources devoted to a single species could be better deployed to protect biodiversity more broadly, that the money and attention focused on pandas might achieve more conservation benefit if spread across the many less charismatic but equally threatened species that receive far less support. This debate reflects a genuine tension in conservation strategy that goes beyond pandas. The argument for focusing on charismatic species like pandas is essentially that these animals are effective fundraisers and ambassadors for conservation, generating support from the public that would not be forthcoming for less appealing species or for more abstract conservation goals. The argument against this approach is that it creates a biased allocation of conservation resources that may not reflect where those resources would do the most ecological good. The reality is probably that both strategies are needed. Charismatic species like pandas as flagships that engage the public and generate funding, combined with systematic, science-based approaches to prioritizing conservation investment across the full breadth of threatened biodiversity. The panda has also contributed to conservation law and policy in important ways. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, known as CITES, lists the giant panda in its Appendix I, the highest level of protection, prohibiting commercial international trade in live pandas or their parts. China's own wildlife protection laws have been progressively strengthened over the decades since panda conservation became a national priority. And the legal framework protecting pandas and their habitat is now among the strongest for any wildlife species in the world. The development of this legal framework, driven in significant part by international concern for pandas, has also created protective infrastructure that benefits many other species sharing panda habitat. Public education about pandas has been a consistent priority of conservation organizations and zoos around the world. Many millions of children have had their first serious encounter with wildlife conservation through pandas, visiting a panda exhibit at a zoo, watching a documentary about pandas, or following the life of a panda cub online. These encounters can plant seeds of conservation awareness and caring that persist throughout life, potentially influencing behaviors and choices that collectively matter for the natural world. The panda has served as an entry point to conservation consciousness for generations of children who have grown up to be engaged citizens, voters, donors, and professionals who care about wildlife and wild places. The aesthetic dimensions of pandas' appeal extend into human artistic and creative culture in fascinating ways. Pandas appear in countless works of visual art, from traditional Chinese ink painting to contemporary digital illustration. They inspire fashion, design, and architecture. The distinctive black and white pattern has been applied to clothing, furniture, and even buildings. Panda-themed merchandise generates significant economic activity globally, from plush toys to cookware to car decorations. The panda character Po in the DreamWorks animated film, Kung Fu Panda, introduced the species to a generation of children in a new way, and the film's depiction of panda movement behavior and character, while obviously fictionalized, drew on real panda research for some of its most charming details. The panda has, in some sense, become a cultural phenomenon that transcends biology, a symbol that people use to express ideas about gentleness, peace, the relationship between humans and nature, and the possibility of living in harmony with the wild world. And so we return, as we must, to the misty forest. The night has deepened around us. The stars have wheeled slowly overhead, and the moon has risen and begun its journey toward the horizon. In the bamboo grove, the large shapes of sleeping pandas are barely visible in the darkness, one curled against the base of a great old fir tree, another stretched out across a flat rock still warm from the afternoon sun, a third sitting upright with its head bowed, as if in meditation, one arm wrapped loosely around a bamboo stalk. They breathe in the darkness, these ancient, improbable, extraordinary animals, and the forest breathes around them, and the world is full of a quiet, deep peace that has nothing to do with the absence of problems and everything to do with the simple, irreducible fact of living. Let your eyes be closed now, or nearly so. Let the panda's breath become your breath, slow and regular, in and out, in and out. The bamboo sways in a gentle wind. Somewhere very far away, a stream runs over smooth stones, making a sound like the lightest possible music. A cloud drifts across the moon, and the forest darkens for a moment, and then the moon emerges again. And the bamboo leaves catch the light and shimmer like thousands of tiny mirrors, all reflecting the same cool silver glow. You know so much about pandas now. You know how they eat and sleep and breathe. You know how they were born and how they learn and how they love their young. You know the bamboo forests of Sichuan and Shanxi and Gansu. You know the names of the mountains and the species of bamboo, and the sound that a panda makes when it is content. This knowledge is a kind of gift, a thread connecting you to those distant forests, to those peaceful creatures, to the ancient living world of which we are all a part, whether we remember it or not. Rest now. Let the panda facts settle into the deeper layers of your mind, where they will be waiting for you when you wake, a small treasure of knowledge about this beautiful world. Let the forest hold you. Let the bamboo sing you down into sleep. The pandas are safe in their mountains. The forest is safe in the dark. You are safe where you are. Let sleep come now, gentle and complete, like a mist settling over a bamboo forest at the end of a long and peaceful day. The panda breathes. The bamboo sways. You are resting now. You are drifting now. Sleep and dream of green mountains and round, peaceful faces and the quiet, endless, nourishing work of a world that has been here for millions of years and will be here still when morning comes again. Let us keep wandering a little longer, because the night is still young, and there is still so much to discover in the world of the giant panda, and every word is another step deeper into rest. Consider the mountain landscape itself, the place where pandas have always lived. The Minchin mountain range, one of the primary strongholds of wild panda populations, stretches across northern Sichuan and into southern Gansu provinces. Its peaks rise above 5,000 meters, their upper slopes bare and windswept above the tree line, while their middle and lower slopes are draped in a complex tapestry of temperate forest types. Coniferous forests of fir and spruce dominate the higher elevations where pandas live, mixed with deciduous trees including maple, birch, and cherry. The understory is rich with shrubs, ferns, and of course the dense groves of bamboo that are the foundation of panda life. This is one of the world's biodiversity hotspots, a landscape of extraordinary ecological richness. The Qinling Mountains, which run east to west across Shanxi province, harbor a geographically isolated population of giant pandas that has been separated from other panda populations long enough to develop some distinct genetic and physical characteristics. Qinling pandas are generally darker in overall coloration, with some individuals showing brownish tones in their white fur. And their heads may have a slightly different shape than pandas from other regions. Genetic studies confirm that Qinling pandas represent a distinct subspecies, sometimes designated Ailuropoda melanoleuca qinlingensis. Compared to the more widespread nominate subspecies, Ailuropoda melanoleuca. This genetic distinction makes the Qinling panda population especially important from a conservation perspective, as losing this population would mean losing a genetically unique component of panda diversity. The Liangshan Mountains, the Xiangling Mountains, the Daxiangling and Xiaoxiangling ranges, each of these subranges within the panda's overall distribution, harbors panda populations of varying size and connectivity. The degree of connectivity between these populations is a critical conservation concern. As isolated populations lose genetic diversity over time and are more vulnerable to local extinction from chance events, such as disease outbreaks or natural disasters. Conservation planning for pandas has focused significantly on identifying and protecting or restoring habitat corridors, strips of suitable forest connecting otherwise isolated panda subpopulations, as a way of maintaining gene flow and population viability across the species range. The Hualong Nature Reserve, established in 1963 and expanded in subsequent decades, is probably the most famous of China's panda reserves. It covers over 2,000 square kilometers of mountain terrain in Sichuan province and is home to approximately 150 wild pandas, making it one of the most panda-dense protected areas in the world. Hualong is also home to the China Conservation and Research Center for the giant panda, where much of the pioneering work in captive panda breeding has taken place. The reserve suffered significant damage in the catastrophic Wenchuan earthquake of 2008, which directly affected panda facilities and habitat, requiring massive reconstruction efforts. The recovery from that disaster was itself an impressive demonstration of the commitment to panda conservation. Chinese authorities and international partners worked quickly to rebuild research facilities and ensure the safety of both captive and wild panda populations. The Four Girls Mountains, Siguanyangshan, in western Sichuan form another important part of panda country, their dramatic granite peaks rising above flower-filled meadows and dense forest valleys. This area is beloved by Chinese hikers and trekkers, and the coexistence of panda conservation with recreational use of the landscape is managed carefully to minimize disturbance to wildlife. The scenic beauty of panda habitat is itself a conservation asset. People who visit these mountains come away with a personal experience of the wild landscape and a visceral understanding of what would be lost if these forests were to disappear. The seasonal movements of pandas within their home ranges have been documented in increasing detail by GPS tracking studies. In spring, pandas in many areas move downslope to take advantage of the emergence of bamboo shoots at lower elevations. As summer progresses and shoots become less available at lower elevations, but fresh leaf growth emerges higher up, pandas move upslope, sometimes reaching elevations of 3,000 to 4,000 meters. In autumn, they may shift their diet and location again in response to changes in bamboo availability. These seasonal movements require access to a connected range of elevations and bamboo species, which is one reason that protecting not just the current locations of pandas, but the full landscape they need to move through, is so important. The panda's fur, while perhaps its most immediately striking feature, also serves important practical functions beyond visual signaling. The thick double coat, a dense, woolly undercoat covered by coarser guard hairs, provides excellent insulation in the cold mountain winters, where temperatures can drop well below freezing. The fur is somewhat water-resistant, allowing pandas to move through rain and snow without becoming dangerously wet and cold. The black fur on the panda's limbs and around its eyes absorbs more sunlight than the white fur, potentially providing slight additional warmth in cold conditions. The overall thickness of the coat means that pandas can tolerate cold temperatures that would be challenging for a less well-insulated animal of similar size. The panda's relationship with its own body temperature is an interesting one. Unlike bears that hibernate, pandas cannot afford to let their body temperature drop significantly during winter. As maintaining metabolic function is necessary to continue digesting the bamboo they must eat year-round. They maintain a relatively stable core body temperature year-round, though they do appear to adjust their activity levels somewhat in response to temperature, being most active in moderate temperatures and spending more time resting in extreme heat or cold. On very hot summer days in captive settings, pandas are often observed seeking out air-conditioned spaces or cooling devices such as fans and ice blocks, indicating that they find high temperatures uncomfortable. The panda's immune system has been the subject of some scientific interest, particularly in the context of understanding the animal's susceptibility to various diseases. Pandas appear relatively resistant to some common diseases that affect other bears, while being susceptible to others. They can carry and transmit canine distemper virus, which has been a concern in areas where domestic dogs come into contact with panda habitat. They are susceptible to various gastrointestinal parasites, which is one reason that fecal analysis is a routine part of health monitoring in both captive and wild panda populations. Research into panda immunology has identified some unusual features of their immune response that may reflect adaptations to the specific disease environment of their mountain forest habitat. The parasites that affect pandas include various worms and protozoan organisms, many of which are shared with other wildlife species in their habitat. Managing parasite loads in captive pandas is an important aspect of their health care, involving periodic antiparasitic treatments and careful management of the environment to minimize opportunities for reinfection. In wild pandas, parasite loads are monitored through fecal sampling programs. And while moderate parasite burdens are considered normal and probably have limited health impact in otherwise healthy animals, heavy parasitism can compromise health and condition, particularly in animals already stressed by food shortages or other challenges. Studies of panda skull morphology, the shape and structure of the skull, have illuminated the evolutionary changes that accompanied the shift to a bamboo-based diet. Compared to more generalist bears, pandas have larger, more rounded skulls, more massive zygomatic arches, the cheekbones, significantly enlarged temporal fossae, the space for the jaw-closing muscles, and extremely broad, flat molars optimized for crushing fibrous vegetation. These changes are so extensive that they significantly alter the overall shape of the head, contributing to the distinctive rounded appearance that makes pandas so recognizable and appealing. From an evolutionary standpoint, the skull of a giant panda is a masterpiece of functional adaptation, every curve and protrusion serving the overriding imperative of being able to eat bamboo efficiently enough to survive. The panda's skeleton more broadly shows adaptations to its particular lifestyle. The limb proportions are somewhat different from those of bears that climb more actively, with the forelimbs being particularly well developed for bearing weight and manipulating bamboo. The panda's spine and pelvis reflect its largely terrestrial lifestyle. Pandas spend the great majority of their time on the ground, unlike some bears that spend significant time in trees. The bone density of pandas is high, providing structural support for their large bodies and for the stresses associated with eating tough bamboo. Pandas have a number of physiological features that help them cope with the challenges of their bamboo diet. Their salivary glands are particularly well developed, producing large quantities of saliva that begins the process of breaking down bamboo before it even reaches the stomach. The stomach walls are thick and muscular, capable of mechanical breakdown of bamboo that the teeth have already processed. The intestines are long, providing maximum surface area for absorption of the nutrients that can be extracted from bamboo. Despite all these adaptations, the efficiency with which pandas extract energy from bamboo remains low by the standards of true herbivores, which is why they must eat so much and so constantly. Scientific studies using doubly labeled water, a technique that allows precise measurement of energy expenditure in free-living animals by tracking the metabolism of isotopically labeled water, have provided the most direct evidence of the panda's extraordinarily low energy expenditure. These studies found that pandas in the wild use energy at rates far below those of other mammals of comparable size, confirming that the low metabolism is not just a feature of sedentary captive animals, but a genuine adaptation of the species. This low energy expenditure extends to the panda's organs. The liver, brain, and kidneys of pandas are relatively small compared to body size, reflecting the energy savings achieved by operating these metabolically expensive organs at reduced capacity. The thyroid gland, which regulates metabolism in mammals, plays a central role in the panda's extraordinary metabolic adaptation. Studies have found that pandas have lower levels of circulating thyroid hormones than would be expected for a mammal of their size, contributing to their reduced metabolic rate. This hormonal adjustment appears to be a genuine long-term adaptation rather than a temporary response to food deprivation, as it persists even when pandas have access to abundant food. The genetic basis for this hormonal difference has been the subject of active research, with studies identifying specific genetic variants in panda thyroid hormone pathway genes that differ from those found in other bears, suggesting that the low metabolic rate has a genetic foundation that evolved as pandas specialized on their bamboo diet. As we follow these threads of panda biology into ever greater depth and detail, the picture that emerges is of a creature of remarkable evolutionary sophistication, an animal that solved a difficult ecological problem through an integrated suite of physical, physiological, behavioral, and genetic adaptations, and that has maintained that solution successfully across millions of years. The panda's apparent simplicity, sit, eat bamboo, rest, repeat, conceals a biological complexity that scientists are still working to fully understand. Every new study reveals additional layers of adaptation and nuance, deepening our appreciation for this extraordinary animal. The panda's relationship to time is one final thread worth following before we let you rest. From our human perspective, watching a panda eat, the animal seems unhurried, even leisurely. But from the panda's perspective, eating bamboo is not leisure. It is the serious, sustained, essential work of survival, the thing that the entire panda body is organized around and committed to. A panda eating bamboo is fully engaged, fully present, applying its considerable physical and sensory resources to the task at hand with complete concentration. There is no distraction, no divided attention, no part of the panda's awareness that is somewhere else while its body goes through the motions of eating. The panda is entirely here, doing this now. This quality of complete presence, which we might recognize as something we ourselves aspire to, often unsuccessfully, is perhaps the deepest gift that pandas offer to the humans who observe them. In a world of constant distraction and divided attention, the panda simply eats its bamboo. In a culture that prizes speed and efficiency and constant stimulation, the panda rests without guilt or urgency. In a time of ecological grief and anxiety, the panda continues to do the ancient, essential things: eat, sleep, breathe, raise cubs, mark trees, live fully in the cool mountain forest that is its home and its whole world. We owe the panda our best efforts at protection, and we owe it something else as well: our attention, our admiration, and perhaps a little of the peace it seems to carry so naturally through its remarkable existence. The pandas are out there now, in the misty mountains of China, doing what they do. The bamboo forest is breathing around them. The stars are moving slowly overhead. The world is old and full of life, and somewhere in it the pandas sleep.